X, I guess, Kick, Twitch, and you can find us later on a whole bunch of different platforms that we upload to. But if you'll help us out and help us overcome the shadow banning that we are subjected to, if you're following us on Rumble, I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the page. It doesn't cost you anything, but you'll get notified when we add new content. If you would like the page, the Two Guys Drinking Coffee page, or like our podcast, follow the page. That would help us out as well, and just help us overcome the shadow ban, the censorship. Even though we supposedly don't have censorship anymore, according to our buddy at Facebook there, but we do. Anyways, we are on a bit of a roll now, aren't we, Fred? With special guests. Well, last week it was Steve Stern. Next week we have another guest that we'll be announcing later. And this week we have retired Lieutenant Colonel Sandy Marecki. Sandy is here to talk to us about the Republic for the United States of America. I first heard her talk on the podcast Patriot Street Fighter with Scott McKay, and I think that was back in January or December, somewhere in that time period. And what she said intrigued me. So just so you'll know, or so that you will not think that Sandy is some fly-by-night conspiracy person, I want to give you a little glimpse of her background. She went through the Air Force ROTC program, emerging with a degree in astrophysics. She later went on to receive a master's degree and PhD in particle physics from UC Berkeley. So Sandy is definitely an intelligent woman. You don't go that far without having some cred. Anyways, she was a pilot, instructor pilot, and test pilot before a vaccine injury took her out of the sky, after which she taught physics at the Air Force Academy until, and I put this in capital letters in my show notes, until she had the nerve to push back on the mandates and the jab during the COVID scamdemic and help students get their religious exemptions from the bioweapon. That act of bravery got her unceremoniously removed from her teaching position in the Air Force. And she is currently in the last phase of an arduous lawsuit for illegal firing and whistleblower retaliation. I'll let her tell more on that if she wants to. But during this scamdemic era, and in the midst of her disciplinary action, she learned about the Republic for the United States of America, which is what we are here to talk about today. Now, we should note that this podcast is not in any way endorsing what will be discussed, just like we don't endorse other things. It's not endorsing what will be discussed or the Republic for the United States of America. Rather, we are bringing you this information so that you can decide for yourself. So let me bring, Sandy jumped out of her chair for a minute. Okay. Let me bring Sandy onto the podcast here. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning. Sorry about that. I just gave you like a heart attack.
That's all right. We appreciate you getting up a little early this morning. Sandy's coming to us from Central Time, so she's an hour earlier in the morning than we are. So we appreciate that, Sandy, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to meet you, Fred.
Nice to meet you too.
So, anyways, what as I mentioned yesterday the other day when we talked on the phone, what we try to do with our guests is just allow them to talk about what they want to talk about in context to the topic. And then, we've prepared some questions just to help clarify some things, because just so everybody knows, Sandy did provide us with a bio, some background on her and the Republic of the United States of America, and from that we were able to glean or bring up some questions. So, Sandy, I really want to turn it over to you to, if you want to. You heard me give a little bit of your bio, but if you want to expand on that and tell us how you got into this the Republic for the United States of America. I think that would be a good launching point, don't you?
How I got involved? Yeah, it's an interesting story. I don't think we
Okay,
talked
well,
about.
why don't you go ahead and take it from there?
Well, I don't want to get into too much of the COVID stuff because that's just too depressing. But
It's also like beating a dead horse a little bit.
I know these days, especially, and you already summarized the fact that I did the thing. I went through the lawsuit, and it's still pending because the judge hasn't made his final decision. It's like, I don't know, 320 days or something. We've been waiting. It's almost a year now that we've been waiting for this decision.
So let me ask you. Let me jump right in and ask you what kind of relief are you asking for in your lawsuit? Are you looking to be reinstated, back pay? What's the action of the lawsuit? If I may ask.
In the current environment, I have zero interest in actually working and back at the academy again, unless for some reason they put me back on active duty and made me a 3-star general. Then I might be the superintendent and I would fix everything.
Okay.
That would be the only way that I would ever go back. So no, I'm not asking for reinstatement, but what I am asking for is, of course, compensatory damages and pain and suffering and whatever else you want to call it. But the total of that comes to, and we haven't gotten to that phase yet because we haven't gotten a decision, but it's 1.7 million in total. I won't get that, but it's got to hurt in order for them to not do this to anyone else again.
Yeah, I'm sure because the taxpayers are the ones that are actually paying for this. It's not. I really don't think this. If they lose and they have to pay, I don't think the government learns.
No.
I appreciate what you're doing. I really do, and I think more people need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But government officials just, it's not coming out of their pocket.
No, it's coming out of the printing press. It's not coming out of our pocket either.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Well, I mean, when you boil it down, when they print another couple trillion, then our money is worthless. It becomes more worthless, right? So it is coming out of our pocket eventually, but
yeah, eventually. Or when the economy crashes, that everything goes down the tubes. But that may be getting into more about what's going to happen in the future. So again, tell us a little bit about how you went, because in your notes here, as you were facing disciplinary action, God led you to the Republic for the United States of America. Tell me how that happened.
Okay. It was a little bit of a sledgehammer from God, but I needed it at that time because I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I could see the writing on the wall because they were, when I was in the military, and we had a civilian member, who was a secretary who needed to be fired. She was promoted out of her other positions because she was so bad. So it wasn't like she was great. And so she's now working for like a group commander as a secretary, and she can't even answer the phone. So I know how to get rid of a civilian because I helped, right? Okay. This is a whole process that you have to go through so you don't trip over any of these gotchas. And so I'm watching them do it to me because it's like, so I can see the writing on the wall. I know they're trying to fire me. And I knew that God had led me to the academy to be an instructor, a professor, because that is everything just lined up perfectly for no, not exactly perfectly, but it did. It lined up. And so that's how I ended up getting that job. And so I'm essentially praying every night. I'm like, God, I know they're firing me, but I don't know what you want me to do next. I honestly don't know what you want me to do next. Tell me what you want me to do. Tell me what you want me to do. And so I keep praying this. So as this is happening, and I randomly meet someone from a group that is supposed to be a guest speaker with one of the Patriot groups that I belong to. And we're just sitting down and talking like you and I did, except we could do it face to face because we lived in the same city.
All right.
And they started saying words that I recognized as being from the Republic because I had been introduced to them October of 2021. That was my first knowledge of the Republic.
Okay.
And this was the summer of 2022. essentially, when I was doing all this praying. And so I hear Republic words, and I'm like, are you with the Republic? And they go, well, yes. How do you know about the Republic? And then, of course, I told them how I was introduced to it. I'm like, okay, that could have been coincidence. I'm not sure. God, tell me, please. I'm praying. 3 weeks later, a second time, almost exactly the same scenario. And it's somebody who starts talking and starts saying Republic words. I go, are you with the Republic? And I go, yes, I am. I'm like, okay, that was it. Sledgehammer. God, I got it. You want me with the Republic. And so I've been working diligently with them ever since.
Well, let me ask you this, and I thought to ask this earlier and didn't get it out. When you were teaching at the Air Force Academy, were you still active duty, or did you
No.
already retire and go as a teacher or a professor?
So I had been injured by all the vaccines. I have
Right.
to use those terms lightly now.
Yeah.
During my military career, part of my career was as a cargo pilot. So worldwide mission, your yellow fever, diphtheria, tetanus, typhus, whatever it is that they wanted to give you. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know any better. Now I know everything's poison, but you only do that when you do your own research.
Right.
Facebook's messing with our feed a little bit.
Say again?
Facebook is messing with our feed a little bit. We're spinning.
Cool.
But it's okay.
Really, it looks all right on this end. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Could be just my end.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, Sandy.
That's all right. So I was not able to continue my military service because of my injuries. And that was my own determination, by the way. There wasn't a medical board that said that.
Okay.
And so I retired at 20 years and
Okay.
went to figure out what should I do next, and figured that I should probably be a teacher since God gave me that skill. And I love physics, and I've always wanted to get a PhD. So that all kind of lined up. And so then I ended up, teaching at the Air Force Academy. So I had retired in April of 2007. So it had been quite a number of years before I was hired in January of 2016 at the Academy, because I had to go and get my PhD.
Yeah,
Just, that little minor thing.
That little piece of paper. Yeah.
I know. I hope it's not worthless. I did a lot of work for that.
So let me ask you this. All right. So you were, now, if I remember correctly, isn't the Air Force Academy in Colorado?
Yes, Colorado Springs.
So were you living in Colorado at the time that you were a professor at the Academy?
I was, but I was actually at Berkeley when I got hired. I was still finishing the PhD. I hadn't quite done that yet. And then this job opened up out of nowhere. Like, I've been watching for 4 years and there'd been 0 jobs. And then this one came open pretty close to when I should have been hired. I should have probably been another 6 months and I would have finished. But, it is what it is. So
Yeah.
I figured, all right, well, if God wants me to go there, God wants me to go there. Well, you're going to disobey. Read the Bible. It doesn't work out well.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, hey, just so you'll know, Sandy, we do have online listeners to the podcast, and I'm looking at comments here. A lot of people are saying good morning, and they're online. And Kelly from Washington State told us that Facebook, she's on Facebook, and so far so good on the feed. So if any questions come up, and I'll encourage anybody to ask questions of Sandy as we go along here, I'll put them up on the screen, and if it's all right with you, Sandy, we'll just ask you to answer the questions as they come up. So
Absolutely.
I just wanted to get that out of the way. So anyways, so going back to the Republic of the United States, you were introduced to that. You ran into a couple people that kind of piqued yours. Are you part of this? So how did your involvement move forward with them, and from when you first heard about it?
Sure. So the individual that introduced me to the Republic was and still is, the interim governor for Colorado in the Republic. And so he would be the one hiring people or requesting you to volunteer.
Yeah.
So since I was still an employee, civilian employee of the military, there's something called the Hatch Act that doesn't allow you to take on any political positions. And so I just became a outreach coordinator, doing essentially what we're doing now, making videos, podcasts, etc. But just like you, the shadow banning, oh my gosh, it was almost absolute. We hardly got any of our messages out, but we did it anyway.
Mhm.
And then everything changed in May of last year. And the shadow banning got less, just enough for our message to get out. And then we just took off after that. And
So
we went from-
that's all pretty recent then, because like I said at the beginning, I heard you on Scott McKay's Patriot Street Fighter in December. I think it was December or early January. So this is all kind of rapidly come to the surface. Is that
Yes. And that's
accurate?
why we're being infiltrated now, because we were coming up too fast again.
Okay. I have up here, and I can actually share the screen in a minute if you want me to. But tell us in a nutshell, if you could, what the Republic for the United States of America is specifically. In other words, if you had to describe it to somebody.
Mhm. So I think most of us know that our founding fathers gave us a constitutional republic. I mean, that wasn't the original thing. We had something called the Articles of Confederation first. It didn't work
Right.
out. It didn't have enough federal level government. And so it failed miserably. Therefore, they went back to the Constitutional Convention and they figured it out, got a constitution, and we had a constitutional republic. Ben Franklin saying it on the way out of the Independence Hall. What do we have? You know, a republic or a monarchy? And says, a republic, ma'am, if you can keep it.
Yes.
Well, we haven't kept it.
Famous quote.
So,
yeah.
yeah, the Civil War came along in 1861, and we ended up fighting each other because bankers whispered in the ears of the North and the South and said, you need to fight. This is how all the wars are pretty much started. And then we had done a lot of damage to our constitutional structure because Lincoln had to do some pretty drastic things to keep the Union together, but losing the Republic. So it kind of went on the shelf for a while. He was going to put it back. He was going to put the Republic back again, but only a week after the Civil War ended, he was killed. So he didn't get the chance. And bad people were in power after that and didn't put it back. So now we get to... Go ahead.
Explain to me when you say put the Republic on the shelf. I mean, we were still the United States of America. We were obviously divided between North and South because the southern states, the Confederacy actually seceded from the United States. But
tried to.
I always thought, as being a novice here in history, that the United States of America as a constitutional republic stayed intact. That's not true?
Not really. You could look at his, he started writing executive orders like Trump is at that time. Not a whole lot of people had done that before because executive orders are really like, let's fly the flag at half staff for the death of somebody. That's more or less what you would do with an executive order. Now, in wartime, it's a little bit more, intense because you've also got the commander-in-chief role. But his writings and his executive orders start talking about something called executive government. We don't have an executive government. And so it was martial law. It was no habeas corpus and a bunch of other things that can happen at that, in a wartime scenario. And now we did eventually get out of the military martial law from the Civil War. People say that we didn't, but there's a very good historian, Jean Hertler, who with her husband David have written the Re-Inhabited books, which is 2 volumes. First one is the history of America, the true history of America. And in there, she's found the evidence that we did exit martial law from the Civil War. And then the second volume is the story of this republic being re-inhabited. So, okay, and damage was done to the republic. We weren't quite a republic anymore because of the Civil War. And then our debt was due, and we had inherited the debt of the South, because we had conquered them. Well, we brought them back into the Union that they should never have left. It's a perpetual union. That's what it means. And so now their debt and our debt is combined, and it's, more than we can pay. And so the banksters, I call them, banking gangsters. And they come and they say, it's due, your debt's due. And they're like, well, we can't pay. We're still in Reconstruction. So they struck a deal with the devil. And it was that we would incorporate. And so now you hear all this talk about the corporate United States, the corporation. I call it the corporate crime syndicate, because it's been pretending to be our government ever since the Organic Act of 1871 and other things that happened in the 70s. And then you get smacked with the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and not a reserve, in 1913. And that just, piggybacks with the IRS, which is not even a United States thing. Everything is a corporation. And there is a website called Dun & Bradstreet. I think it's dnb.com. And it takes a little while to get used to using it, but you can find the corporate status and listing for every department. They changed the name. It's USA Incorporated, United States Incorporated, United States of America Incorporated, White House Incorporated. It just goes back and forth because they have to keep hiding their bankruptcies. So they just restructure, and they've been pretending to be our government ever since. And every department.
Yeah, so. I've got a quick question though, and maybe you can help clarify this for me, because to prepare for this podcast, I did a lot of research, and I looked up the Organic Act of 1871, and it appears to me, again, being a novice, it appears to me to only apply to the 68 square miles that is the District of Columbia. So how did explain to me and our listeners, how did this act, which in the text anyway keeps referring only to the District of Columbia, how did this incorporate the entire country, and how did it hijack the government of the United States? I mean, that specific act, I know there's a lot of other things that have done it, but this particular act.
So I can't get into the weeds. Well, first of all, we don't have enough time. And second of all, I don't have all that knowledge. Okay. But we do know that when you incorporate the government center, then, how does the state, like Texas, Iowa, Illinois, how do they interface with a corporation? Well, the only way is to be incorporated themselves. Okay. So either by trickery or by bribery or by threats or whatever, they said, hey, states, you need to incorporate too. It's this great thing. We don't know what happened back then, but it was a process. It took maybe 10, 20 years until all the states did it. And of course, not all the states were in the Union yet. But anyone who came in after 1871 almost certainly was never a republic. It was never in the republic, because it had pretty much gone away with that act. And so, on paper anyway. And so it just took time and it's a boiling the frog. Oh, these guys are special. They are so good at this slow manipulation over time so that the normies don't see it, don't know it. Even the people in government don't know it. How many people do you know, maybe friends, that said, well, I'm going to be the whatever in your government, county or city councilman or county commissioner or something, and I'm going to do good. Have you ever noticed their personality change as soon as they take their oath of office? They've kind of read, what's really going on, and will kill your family if you don't follow along, or whatever it is they tell them. I don't know, but it's something like that.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of politicians that maybe go to the state government, the state seats or the federal government with good intentions, but they are quickly compromised.
Correct.
So going back to the Republic for the United States of America, and I will bring up the website so people can see this, so they can look at it for themselves
Sure.
whenever they have time. Let's see here. So tell us about what they are and what their purpose is, and what their.
How did they get started?
Well, yeah, I
That's an
mean,
interesting story.
yeah, go ahead, take it.
Okay, so a group of retired military, probably generals for the most part, was trying to figure out during the JFK era, either before or after he was killed, we're not sure. We haven't gotten the full story because they're telling us the story. And they're trying to figure out how to save America because they can see what's going on 60 years ago. And so they reach out to patriot groups. And at the time, it's November of 2008. It was just after, quote, Obama was elected, unquote. Who knows what really happened in that election.
Yeah.
And so they became very concerned because they could see or knew what was going to happen during his administration. And then, of course, Hillary was supposed to take over after him. So they approached a group of patriots, several groups actually, and this one was called Restore America Plan and Constitution Radio, I believe. I have to double check the names, but that is James Timothy Turner. They just call him Tim Turner, and several of his colleagues. And so this was a group of, we call them, I think they were called the Army of Virginia. I'm still trying to learn more about them, but these are the original folks that were trying to save the country and didn't know how to do it. They just knew that they had to start planning and do something, right? So they were gathering loyal military people.
Okay.
So they approach Tim Turner and his colleagues and they say, can you restore the Republic? Because Tim was already fully aware. They're listening to his radio shows and everything. They know that we have a corporation and they're teaching you how to lawfully not pay taxes because taxes are all voluntary. It's the word straight out of the IRS. I mean, it's, so you just have to know it. It's like, well, why do they arrest people? Because they're mean. It's pretty much it. They have to keep people paying taxes, right? So anyways, so they said, can you restore the Republic? And he says, well, we're going to do our darndest. And so Tim is a very pious man, and he fasts and prays, and he gets a message from God. And he essentially said, these are the things you need to do. And it became like a 22-step plan, 22-step process of things that needed to be done. And so the next time, and we call them the White Hats now, it's the Army of Virginia. That's how they started. And after the plan was given to the White Hats, they said, where did you get this plan? This is the best plan we've seen in 50 years. And when you do that math backwards, that comes to the JFK timeframe. So most of the information I'm sharing with you comes from them.
Okay.
And what Tim told me, because I asked him specific questions on this topic so that I would have it straight so I could tell people like you and your listeners. Mm-hmm. So they said, well, please go ahead with it. And so they started with the grassroots effort, like you need to, getting the counties back up to speed, getting the states back up to speed, getting a governor, secretary of state, and, justices, senators, House of Representatives, essentially rebuilding from scratch because the corporation has been pretending to be our government and has had all these titles. But there's this republic over here that's been abandoned this whole time. And it's got the same seats with the same names and stuff, or same, positions on it. They've just been empty. So they did their research for months, went all the archives, and figured out that the republic was never abolished. It was only abandoned by the Act of 1871. And throughout time, that is what had just been sitting there gathering dust. So they reseated the republic. And they did it with enough to make a quorum of states, at least 26, at least half of the states, in the summer of 2012. So this was, I'm sorry, summer of 2010. So it only took them a year, really, to do all this. And they had millions of people on this Constitution radio. And so it just spread like wildfire and really got everything going. The states continued to reseat and do all the things that they needed. And by November of 2010, there was like a constitutional convention, like we talked about, that created the Constitution. And with 36 states, I believe they had now had seated at that point, they signed what they called the Declaration of Sovereign Intent. Sounded like kind of a Declaration of Independence, sort of. And so the bottom line is we're back. And so that satisfied the military that we had finally brought the republic back, because the goal here was to have a lawful civil authority ready to go at a moment's notice in case the military had to take action against this corporate crime syndicate that's not a government. And they would not ever do that without a lawful civil authority, because they cannot violate their oaths of office to the Constitution, ever. And they would have if they would have become a military government. So,
all right, let me
Obama and the rest, we were just sitting, we're gathering people and doing more and getting more volunteers in case we were called up at a moment's notice, because they had to step in, and whatever they were doing was so heinous, they had to do something about it.
Right.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Let me step in here just for those that have tuned in late today. We are talking to Dr. Sandy Marecki, PhD in particle physics, and retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and talking about the Republic for the United States of America, and how it got started and what it is all about. So let me make sure I understand this. So basically, we have a parallel. Can we call it a parallel government? In other words,
That's what it sounds like.
we have the official corporate government. Let's say that we have the official corporate government, but now we have an entity that is organized, and it has governors and officials and a president, and ready to go on the side. Is that a fair summary of what you just said?
Yes, I would use slightly different words. The republic is the authentic government.
Okay.
Because we took the one off the shelf, dusted it off, and put the people back in. And so the military, after we had done everything that we said, we brought our paperwork to them and said, here's what we've done. And they went through it word for word, line by line, took an entire day with their staff. And they, at the very end, said, you have done this 100% lawfully and constitutionally. You are the government.
Now, just out of curiosity, I mean, it's not possible for states to ratify to get rid of this this entity that they've created.
So it is, but where's the enforcement arm?
It's a good question.
That is the whole reason why we've been just sitting on the sidelines waiting, because we don't have that. Well, we're kind of sort of trying to work on that, but we don't have an enforcement arm. We don't have a way to say, hey, governor, you're out because you're from the corporation and you're not following your oath of office. You're not doing anything you're supposed to be doing. Well, there's a group of folks that have actually determined that during the Biden administration, nobody had an oath of office. When you requested it, the Freedom of Information Act, where they have to have an oath of office on file within 30 days, and all this, the stuff that's in the code. No, so they sent, so you say, I want the oath of office for this one, this one, this one, this one. So they sent in what they had.
That's because they swore them in during January 6th when nobody was paying attention.
Well, it was either that, or it was they never got it notarized, which is a requirement. They never had it countersigned. They never were sworn in by a justice. All this like requirements. And you can go through each one of these pieces of paper, and all of them have a problem, at least one problem. So they have never taken an oath of office. That included, just as a side note, Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, who got a security clearance based upon that oath that he never took or never did properly. And so was he guilty of espionage? He can never lawfully give an order for anyone to take any medical anything ever, because he didn't have the authority without that oath on file. So,
Yeah, that came out. We reported that on this podcast, as a matter of fact, when it was going on. That, and I can't remember who broke the story that we saw.
Todd
but
Callender.
There was a lot of people in the government, officials, in the bureaucracy, that never took their oath of office. So therefore, they were illegitimately occupying that seat. But nothing was ever done. Nothing. It just, like everything else, we have a very short news cycle. You hear about it, it goes away, and I think that's the government's, the whole government's MO is people will forget about it, so we'll just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah,
that was the plan, though, to get Kamala in, and it was checkmate once she won, but she didn't. But that was the plan. They were going to get in, and they wouldn't have been responsible for anything once Kamala got there.
Well, the thing about the plan is, the bad guy's plan was supposed to be Hillary in 2016.
Right. What's
And
that fair?
Trump won because they didn't cheat enough. Hillary's group did not cheat enough. They said, okay, we think we're pretty sure Trump's going to get this many votes. Therefore, we need to cheat this much in these states, and then we're going to win. So it was like a static cheating, right? They replanned it, and they guessed wrong. Either that or the white hats and the good guys actually blocked some of the cheating so that it kind of threw their plan off and Trump won. They did not expect that. That is the only reason why you and me are not talking about this in a FEMA camp as participants of the FEMA camp, because that was the plan, was to get all patriotic Americans, anyone who could be anti-government, would be arrested, and it'd be a POW camp essentially. So, or a concentration camp, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
So Biden was an emergency thing, and Kamala was an emergency thing, and so that was not part of the plan. But they were still trying to save the plan.
They were both puppets.
Yeah, but
that goes back to Obama too, though. I mean, Obama. Yeah. I mean, whoever the powers that be, and I hate doing those air fingers quotes, right, but whoever, whether it's the Club of Rome, the
Pilgrim Society,
whatever number you want to give them, the cabal, whatever title, they put Obama in. I mean, Obama in there to accelerate their plan. Their plan goes all the way back to the Civil War, to Woodrow Wilson, to FDR, to Lyndon Johnson, and then ultimately to Barack Obama, who came out and famously stated he wanted to fundamentally transform the United States of America, which that was his intention. He spoke out against the country when he was an adjunct professor at Harvard, which I think was a joke. But and then, as you say, Sandy, Hillary's job was to finish. It was going to be 8 years of Obama, 8 years of Hillary, and then the country would be gone.
World War III.
Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, World War III was the plan during Hillary's administration. This is what, again, the white hats are talking about, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, and we narrowly avoided that just because Trump got elected. And oh boy, did he get attacked?
We all know what happened.
95% of the entire world's media is owned by 6 families or 6 companies. Yeah, they all happen to be the same religious background, but we won't go there.
I mean, I know people who are active soldiers who were told about some of this stuff, and they even said that the government believes that we'll actively fire on American citizens, but we won't.
Well, here's the thing. That's how they got rid of many of the generals in Obama's administration. is
Right.
they asked that question and they
Right,
said,
exactly.
if you were ordered, if there was a situation where you were ordered to fire on American citizens, would you do it? The ones that said yes stayed. The one that said no were asked to retire.
Right.
We know this for a fact.
But I
And so
know
that was
active people. I'm just saying there's active people who never answered that question to where they thought that they would actually do it
They
because they
weren't
knew they'd get
generals at
fired.
the time. Yeah, they weren't generals at the time. So
Well,
yeah.
that goes to the rank and file in the military. In other words, you can say that the generals, but it begs the question. Generals give the orders; they're not the ones pulling the trigger.
The
Correct.
soldiers.
And it goes down the chain of command. But
Mhm.
when it comes right down to it, and I realize they everybody in the military and you know this, Sandy, obviously you were in the military. You take an oath of to defend the United States of America, defend the Constitution against all enemies, domestic and foreign. And if it comes right down to it, if they're given that order to take out a group of United States citizens, will the people with the guns, i.e. the enlisted,
Soldiers.
will
Mhm.
they actually do it?
Right.
I hope they wouldn't.
Well, I'll tell you, it's probably a little bit more iffy because of the COVID jabs. Have you seen a change in personality of any of your friends or family that have taken these shots?
No, we were anti it from the beginning.
You are so lucky. So I was at the academy when this was all happening, and I'm watching cadets who they want to serve their country so bad that they're willing to poison their bodies in order to do it. They knew it was bad. They knew it was, and they did it anyway. It's just, and so now you've got whatever it is, 98% or something of the military has got the jab. What is that going to do to them? Or are they going to finally, and this is the thing I'm really fearful of, they're going to say, yeah, we poisoned you. And if you want to live, we'll give you the antidote, but only if you do what we tell you. That's what I think is the plan, or was the plan at least. So we'll see.
I don't know if there is a quote unquote antidote for what they've given us. They can I think the bioweapon was intended to either kill immediately or kill by destroying the immune system, or making customers for life for the big pharma.
Turbo cancer.
Yeah, I mean I've seen it. I've known people that got the jab and that's happened to them. So I think that's a whole nother story that we kind of going down a different rabbit
that's
hole
a couple
here.
of hours.
Yeah,
So,
really. So back to the Republic of the United States of America. You were telling me on the phone call that we had the other day, because I asked the question, okay, and I use this term loosely, the intelligence people in the United States government have to have this organization on their radar and know what's going on and probably even infiltrated it. So they're obviously letting it continue in a manner of speaking without arresting everybody for sedition or whatever, and maybe there's no grounds for that, so they can't. But tell us, you told me a little bit about the infiltration and how they kind of fractured the organization, the republic, the official republic. Give us a little background of what's happened in the last few years with this movement, or the republic.
Sure. So back in the 2010 to 2012 timeframe, the growth was so spectacular in this republic, and millions of people were following it and participating. And it's during Obama's administration, remember, because this whole thing started then. So Obama sent in the 3-letter agencies, whoever Hillary, it was Obama, Biden, Hillary. I mean, it's the three of them, right?
Hillary, I love it.
So, IRS, ATF, FBI, whoever they wanted to send in, these were sharp people. And so they ended up being governors, senators, etc. And they launched a plan in the 2012 timeframe. Now, the first thing is that the president, so the appointed president, Tim Turner, so that came out of the Constitutional Convention pretty much, that he would serve as president until the republic was actually in the government, and then we would our whole mission is holding elections. All of us that are holding these seats are all interim temporary people. We know this from the day we take the oath of office. It's like, I give this up as soon as we have an actual election. I'm just holding the seat, right? So Tim was appointed as the president to hold that seat until we had actual elections. Logical person to have. He was the main brainstorm motivator, et cetera, for the whole group.
Okay.
So of course they attacked him, and around him, he surrounded himself with really questionable people, and all the people in the Republic are saying, Tim, don't do this. This is not a good person. This is not a good person. Oh, they're fine. Never listened. And so FBI has already been working with him, the corporate FBI, and tricked him into going to a meeting. He went to the meeting and they arrested him. So they didn't have to fight or anything, right? It was a very smart plan, actually, to get him to not, have this big firefight or whatever, right? Because they didn't want that. So this was September of 2012. And then he had his trial in March of 2013. It didn't go well, of course. It was a kangaroo court set up from the beginning, and he got like 18 years for IRS fraud or bond fraud, or I don't know what all the charges were, but it was just paper crimes. And he defended himself. He proved himself, but they erased all of his testimony and said, yeah, you're guilty. So that was that. So without the president, goes through line of succession. And so we ended up with the Senate president at the time was James Buchanan Geiger, Jim Geiger. And he's still the president today because, of course, we haven't had elections yet. So so he's the actual president. And I'm trying to go back to your infiltration question. Okay, so we actually had another infiltration. Oh, then they started arresting random people. This governor, that senator, that justice, whatever, because they were involved with some of the same IRS stuff or the bond stuff that Tim had been doing. And so they just started snatching people. Well, that just made the whole millions scatter. And so we went from millions of people to a few hundred people in the Republic holding the seats. And we had only a couple states represented. Then we are slowly trying to build again. 2016-17, we're infiltrated again. Not as bad as the first time, but still a lot of people left. I think there were a couple more arrests at that time. And so then the people ran again. So this is actually the third infiltration that has now started. And I could see it happening back in the summer of last year. I see these very questionable people coming in, but just like the Bible says, you judge by fruits, not by feelings. So we watched, and sure enough, they launched their plan in January of this year when they tried to take over the Senate. Oh, by the way, it was the same plan in 2012. And we're just watching it replay again. That's why we have these books, so that people can read about it. And we make it a requirement so that you learn about how they did it the first time, so you could see it any other time that happens. And so we're going through a discernment test right now. And that is, do you believe what we call it the splinter group that's now trying to break off again, another group of people, or do you believe the original Republic and what we stand for, what we're doing? And so that's what we're going through right now. And so you'll probably hear about other people calling themselves Republic, but you won't hear, me or Jim Geiger, because this is the real original Republic. We're still holding those seats. And these other people are off doing whatever they're doing. Anyways, we won't talk too much about that.
Yeah. You know, it's
Yeah,
it's interesting, and I should mention this, Sandy, because you had talked about people really attacking your group, in yourself personally. I did as a test to see if we could start boosting out of our Patriot Pulse Facebook page, because we were banned from any kind of boost or advertising on Two Guys Drinking Coffee, our previous podcast.
Mhm.
They did allow me to do an ad, to do a boost of a post I did about this interview. Actually, it was in a. You would not believe the vile vitriol attack that post received from just random people, not part of, they weren't followers of the page, but because I had did an ad, so it went out to everybody, within the United States. That post got attacked. I mean, I was deleting the comments, quite frankly, because they were that vile. I mean, they were using words I would not use in any kind of a group setting.
No.
So this is, you being an Air Force pilot, there is an old saying I know that says, you take the most flack when you're over the target.
You got it.
Okay. And I think that demonstrated that this is hitting the nerve of some people. Now, I don't know if those were bots. I don't know if those were real people. There was no way for me to tell. I would guess that because they came in such speed and veracity that it had to be some kind of AI generated.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Definitely a plan.
Yeah. But to me, that just kind of lends credibility. If the black hats are attacking what you're doing, if this was nonsense, if there was nothing to this, why would they be attacking it?
That's my point.
It's just like in the Bible when they were going after Jesus, and there were some people in the Sanhedrin that said, if this Jesus fellow is nothing, if he's just a false prophet, this will all go away. But if it's real, if he's truly who he says he is, there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I kind of look at that. I'm reminded of that scripture passage. I know I just paraphrased it, but if this is true, if your motives
authentic.
are true.
Yeah, if we're authentic, that's the way I say it. If
you're authentic, you're not, you're gonna be attacked, and if it's truly what God ordains, it can't be stopped.
Correct.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense though, because a lot of the things Obama did does kind of center around that. I mean, he also went after local militia. He also went after the students. He was trying to get everybody on his side. I mean, most local militia, he sent agencies in to try to disband them, to get them off track, because he knew that even if he comes in and tries to take America, locals are gonna band together. What else did he go after? Our guns, our ammunition. This is all stuff Obama did when he was in office, telling you he was trying to disarm America.
Right. Well, that's the only reason why we're still here, is because of the Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
We would have been like Europe. Europe has been unarmed for how many decades now? And I think New Zealand or Australia, I can't remember, one or maybe both, were just disarmed within the last 10 years, I think. I might have my timeline off. But and look what just happened to them during COVID.
Yeah, I remember the Australia thing because it showed, again, citizen reporters from these countries were showing piles of guns just being destroyed. They were being turned. Kelly asked again about how to find out more information. I'm going to share the screen again for the website. The website is called Republic for the United States of America.org. You're seeing it right there on your screen.
Right.
And this there's a lot of information in here, and I went through a lot of it. And
it's an archive. It really is an archive of all of our documents, videos, Senate calls, radio shows. We still got our Radio 101, Constitution Radio 101 is still in there, and some other things. And so all of our founding documents, I told you about the Declaration of Sovereign Intent from 2010, but we also did a proclamation of claim and interest in April of 2012, I believe, which was what it sounds like, claim and interest. We reclaimed everything that the corporation stole from the American people, like the dirt, everything to the center of the earth, everything out to the infinity in the universe, the air, the plants, the animals in America that were stolen from the people. We're holding it in trust until the American people want it back. And that's all here on this webpage.
Okay. Let me make sure I want to clarify something here. Okay. Well, first of all, as I understand it, I mean, there has to be some kind of martial law declared for this to come about. But let's say this comes about. Do I understand it correctly that you're not looking to replace the original Constitution? You're looking to reestablish the country as a constitutional republic under that original Constitution and Bill of Rights. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And there was actually, when we had a quorum in the House and the Senate in the 2010 to 12 timeframe, we ended up making a decision, actually, the whole vote and everything, right? Like you're supposed to do in a constitutional Congress, that everything reverts to December 19th of 1860. That's the Constitution that we follow, because it's the only, when you have cancer, you cut back to healthy tissue. And so when was the first state leaving the Union, right? If there was such a thing. And that was South Carolina, I believe, December 20th of 1860. And so the vote was, we know we had an operational republic as of the day prior.
Okay.
And that's where we go back to. That also includes something called the original 13th Amendment, not the one we currently have on the books. Now, I will calm everyone down. Slavery is not in this Constitution. So in the Declaration of Sovereign Intent, Proclamation of Claim and Interest, we very clearly spell out all men are created equal, and all means all. That's what we stand for. So and women have the right to vote, and all of the other things that came later, right? 1920 was when the supposed amendment, I think it's the 20th Amendment, came out that said that women can vote. Well, of course women can vote, because, it's all means all. So, that's what happens. But that original 13th Amendment, as a side note, we can do a whole other show on that, is we call the Titles of Nobility Amendment. And it was so important to our founding fathers. They tried 3 times to get it, and finally got it done in 1819. Virginia was the last one to sign it. And it says that if you hold a title of nobility, such as Esquire for bar attorneys, I'm just saying, you lose your citizenship and can never hold any office whatsoever in this republic. Or accept any gifts or titles or emoluments or whatever, and all the other. So that is the actual 13th Amendment. And that's the one, that's where we cut off. We follow that one. So
that brings up another interesting question then. Let us just say that all of this comes about. Martial law is declared, the military takes over, they say we don't have a right, we got to have a civilian government. The Republic for the United States of America takes, reestablishes the original republic. Does that mean then, which would be exciting actually, does that mean that things like that happened after that time period of the 1860, 1870 in that area, like the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, like and I can't remember which amendment it was that made income tax, the 16th Amendment, I think, would that make all of those null and void?
Until we revisit each and every one of them and go through the proper republic process to see if the people really want it. I don't think people want income tax, just saying. Now, are we going to have to fix the Constitution? 100%. There's going to have to be some sort of constitutional convention of some kind because we have to fix the holes that allowed all of this to happen in the first place. So we're going to have to. So they did a 90%, 95% really good job of seeing the future and putting all the things in there. But there's several things that were missing, like term limits and medical autonomy, some other things in the Bill of Rights. So
well, there were things that they couldn't even anticipate back then. I mean,
computers.
Really.
Censorship. I mean, the First Amendment kind of covers it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a scary proposition in my opinion. It kind of brings us around to a discussion on the Convention of States that's going on right now. Bringing about an Article 5 convention. There's a lot of
they're trying to fix
on that.
But they're trying to fix the corporate constitution.
Yeah,
they're not trying to fix the original one, which is where we need to go. We need to cut back to where we know it was healthy, and then progress forward from there. And that's, again, another thing that we stand for. But we don't have the authority in the current republic to do any of that. We can think about it. We can argue and debate, and we can make a list of all the things we would want to do. But it has to be after that first republic election. Remember, we haven't had a republic election since 1860. Okay.
Right.
No one has lived in a republic that's currently in this current country. It's a completely different thing. And real freedom of speech, I am allowed to say anything that I want to. Now, I should be acting honorably, but have we ever, if I have a disagreement with you, have we ever been taught how to go through that? No. We just are taught to be offended and go through a lawsuit.
Lately.
Oh my gosh.
Let me ask. We're getting close to. It's already a couple minutes after 10, and we try to do. We got to get you back, get more clarification on this, and we will. I'll talk to you about that off camera. But one of the questions that I came about with all of this is all of this reseating the constitutional government is predicated on martial law being declared.
Yes.
What if that never happens?
So the one thing, again, this is the plan, right? The plan. What we were told in 2008 and what's been passed down through the generation here and is written in the books, like I talked about, is that this republic will stand up as the lawful civil authority over the military, which right now is corporate, the corporate Pentagon, the corporate, Department of Defense, the corporate everything. That will cease to exist and will all be moved back into the republic. Now, remember, the white hats are doing this, right? So we've got retired military and we've got active duty military, some that are still working together behind the scenes. You've probably heard Reno mentioned a couple of times. And so that's who's going to need to do this. Now, all the decisions that they've made up till this point is the least amount of violence and death options. They don't want any violence and death if they can help it, right? Now, there's going to be probably people in the streets or whatever when this all happens. And to just point out, remember, Trump is CEO of the corporation. Again, he was in 2017. He's now in 2021 or 2025. Same thing, right? He's still the CEO using these executive orders like weapons against the corporation. It's the corporation's executive orders being used against the corporation, which I think is just fabulously beautiful. And it's got to take some time to take down all these three-letter agencies that don't exist in the 1860 Republic. Go look at the cabinet and the departments that we had back then. We don't have any of this stuff. Now, do we need an FAA? Yes, we do. We didn't have an FAA back then. So there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to have to bring forward. But you guys get the basic gist. Okay, we're going to go back to simple federal government, very minimal federal government, not like now where they have, 500,000 employees or something in the federal government. It's like, guys, we only have 335 million people. How do you have 500,000? Sorry, I think I misspoke. 500,000 people in the federal government. It's just insane. So we need to get back to that. We need to get back to where it's the people in the counties. That is the government. The states only do the things to coordinate the counties. And the federal level, the national level, only does the thing to coordinate the states. That's it.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
We know by the 10th Amendment, which has really been violated, at every turn, that there's a very clear delineation between federal responsibility, state responsibility, and what comes down to the local municipalities. Just by, you could look at almost every 3-letter agency that you just talked about, and they're all unconstitutional under the 10th Amendment. But the government manipulates that, with the what is it called? The necessary and proper clause and other things. So anyways, that's another story altogether. I'll tell you what we're going to do, folks. Again, we're running out of time here. I don't want to hold this on too long. After we let you go, Sandy, we gotta talk about a little local politics here, right in Pennsylvania, McKean County specifically. And I want to get this out because I promised somebody I would do it. But Sandy, I do want to get you back. I hope you agree to come back on and talk a little bit more about this, because it's intriguing. I got to be honest with you. I don't see the power people giving up their power without a lot of death and destruction. It won't, in other words, it won't be the white hats causing it. It won't be the white hats, being the first to shoot. But I see the power people, the black hats, whatever you want to call them, the cabal, they are never going to cede their power without taking a lot of lives with them. And that scares me a little bit. Any thoughts on that?
Well, remember that the options that have been going on so far was the least amounts of violence and death. That doesn't mean zero. It's going to be the least amount, right? So they're going to do the best that they can to make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah.
So we are just going to, and I think you also know, if you've ever seen any of Derek Johnson's stuff, that there's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, especially during the so-called Biden administration, that, for lack of a better word, is good stuff, because it had to happen behind the scenes. I'll just give you one example. A real good friend of mine who's a retired Navy, has a son who's currently in the Navy, who is currently stationed at Gitmo. And they're all under an NDA, and he cannot say anything that's going on there.
Well, there's a lot of...
Why? What's going on at Gitmo? Oh.
Well, there's a lot of talk among people. We have Fred and I have a small group, Facebook Messenger group that shares a lot of information. There's a lot of chatter about things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, and it all ties into Gitmo and ties into who's being arrested and so on and so forth. So a lot of this could already be happening. Who knows?
Well,
we just don't know.
I was a cargo pilot for a while, and one of my special certifications was flying into Gitmo because it's a special approach and everything. And there was like 1-2 big flights a week. And now it's daily, multiple flights per day. There's prison ships or hospital ships or whatever parked in the bay that don't normally sit there. There's all kinds of stuff that you can verify by just looking with your eyes, so if you don't know about Derek Johnson's stuff, I would highly recommend that you go look in his executive orders and all the things that he's seeing, all the inconsistencies with the Biden administration and all of the the things that the military did wrong, right, for his inauguration, and anytime he's at some event or whatever, and it's just the uniforms are wrong. I say everything is wrong. It's like, what is going on? You know, and it's right in your face for anyone who's in the military.
Yeah, so, Derek Johnson has put out just a ton of information out there, and you're right. I mean, it all just goes to prove that the previous 4 years to this administration was fraudulent and brought about by a coup d'état. The other thing that worries me, Sandy, too, is that just like we discovered during the scamdemic, that so many people are asleep at the wheel. They just blindly go along, and they don't want to know the truth. They don't believe what's being told to them. But think of how many millions of people, I've heard numbers up to 75% of the population rolled up their sleeve and were willingly injected with with a bioweapon.
Right. We think it's about 2/3.
Okay. Well,
ish.
But it's still a lot of people.
Well, and they took only one, and then there's several, of course, that are like addicted now. They have to have one every 6 months.
Well, because it destroys the immune system.
Yeah.
Right.
They got to keep. They just made customers for life if it didn't kill them.
But that's deep.
The point.
This is deep. You got a lot of stuff you got to think about once you restructure everything. I mean, there's people whose lives have been robbed. If they went back to the original, there's no way for them to be able to take care of themselves. It's deep. It's deep.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sandy, we always end our podcast with a prayer. I told you that when we talked on the phone, and we're going to do this. Although, again, for those of you in the Pennsylvania and the Bradford area, please stay on with us afterwards, because we want to talk about a little bit about local politics. But Sandy, Fred is he got a promotion. He's our vice president in charge of prayer. So I'm going to ask Fred to close the podcast in prayer and lift you and what you folks are doing up in prayer as well. So Fred, can you take it from there?
Yeah. Lord, I pray for this organization and what they're doing. But right now, Lord, I also pray that you give them wisdom, give them guidance, give them a strategy that's going to work, Lord. And Lord, give us the understanding of how we should do. If we're going to do something like this, you would give us the understanding of how it needs to be done. I pray that you put a hedge of protection around these people, that they're not taken out by these people who don't want to see anything good happen. I ask, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and understanding and just bring the darkness to the light. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And Sandy, thank you so much for joining us today. I will be in touch, I guarantee you, and we'll get you back on. Okay.
I'd love to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It was nice to see you.
All right. Same here. All right. Thank you. Okay. Wow. So back to, all right, we got to say goodbye to Sandy there. Just a couple things. Somebody brought up something to me with regard to local politics. And if you're not in McKean County or in Bradford specifically, you can ignore this, but I say this out there just to encourage you to be involved wherever you are. Okay. It doesn't matter whether you're in Washington like Kelly or over in Warren County like my other friend Kelly, wherever you are, or Tom, be involved and know what's going on in your local politics. We have a school board race coming up we have the primary coming up on May 20th. But then in the general election, we got school board members are going to be elected. And there's a lot of things that people don't understand what's on the table. In other words, when they go through this whole woke gender identity issues and in the pornography that's in the school libraries, it really, even though these are volunteer positions, they're not paid positions. These are very important positions because they have the ability to rein in what the administration is doing. And unfortunately, we need more conservative individuals on these boards and in local municipalities for that matter. But I'm going to point you just to, if you're in McKean County and want to know about what is who the Republican candidates and what I would consider conservative candidates, you can go to McKean-County-GOP.org. That's a site. Actually, I manage the site for them. I'm the webmaster. But that'll give you a list of every Republican candidate running for office in the primary, from state judges all the way down to school board and judge of elections. So check that out. Understand who you're voting for before you cast your vote. Your vote is important, and it's important that you be an informed citizenry so that you can vote accordingly. So I just ask you to do all of that and make your vote count. And that goes for we got 2 contested judge spots, one on the Commonwealth Court, one on the Superior Court. You have a group of individuals in the state GOP that have endorsed candidates, and basically they're telling you who you should vote for. Well, I personally think that's garbage. The primaries belong to the people. We determine, not a group of political, bosses in the party, who is going to run in November. So do your due diligence on the 2 people that are running for both the Superior Court and the Commonwealth Court. And again, go to McKean-County-GOP.org and you can get that information. If you're anywhere in Pennsylvania, obviously you're going to be voting for these judges. So it's important. We say on this podcast all the time that we need people engaged in politics, or we will not have a free country. Okay. Right. It's that simple. We got to this position because of apathy, because people didn't want to get involved. They say that prosperity, makes weak men, and that's where, men and women, that's where we are right now. We've got a bunch of people that and we're getting railroaded because we have no one that will stand up. It's time we, the people, stand up and do something to restore the United States of America to what it was originally intended to be. Fred, I'm really on my soapbox here. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, that was so deep listening to what she had to say, and I was kind of caught up in thought. I mean, she went in areas I did not know she would go into, but yeah, we definitely need to pay attention to the elections. It's really, 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 really important.
Yep. Okay. All right. So with that, it's 10:19. We've gone way over time. We appreciate everybody being on with us today, as we always do. Oh yeah, Kelly mentioned about voting no for the state judges. All right, let me just mention that again. And there is some confusion here, so you gotta be a little vigilant when you go to the polls on May 20th. But there are 3 judges at the state Supreme Court. Pennsylvania is one of the states where we actually elect the Supreme Court judges, and they serve for a 10-year term. Mm-hmm. But judges come up for what's called retention. It's not a vote. It's not a partisan thing where you can have another person running against them. You either vote, yes, we want to retain them for another 10 years, or no, we don't want to retain them. All right. Right now, our state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania is divided 2 Republicans, 5 Democrats. And these 5 Democrats have demonstrated, especially during the COVID scamdemic, that they will do whatever they have to do to suppress the people, suppress the truth, and stop people from being free. They legislate from the bench. Mm-hmm. They uphold in the case of the scamdemic, the communist Governor Wolf. They upheld his edicts. They have refused to hear the lawsuits brought by the legislature when Wolf was violating every constitutional, principle there was. So we have the opportunity to remove 3 far left Democrat legislate from the bench judges and hopefully get conservative judges elected to take their place. But it all starts with the retention vote. Now, as I understood it, that retention vote happens at the November general election. I tried to call our county elections office and got some conflicting information. So I still think it's in November, but be aware if it pops up on the ballot in the primary, which I don't think it will, but be aware if it a retention vote for Supreme Court justices in Pennsylvania, vote no.
Oh,
Get
no.
get these leftist radical judges out of the Supreme Court. So that's the last thing I'm going to say. I could talk for another 3 hours. Anyways,
Yep.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming on. And thank you, Kelly, for reminding me about that. I appreciate it. And Fred, thank you for being here and being the co-host on the show today, and or co-host on the show all the time now. And we will see you next week when we have another special guest, and be watching for our Facebook page where we will announce who that is. And it'll be another good one. You don't want to miss it. So it's Shayla Richardson. I don't have time to tell you her story, but watch for our Facebook and you'll find it. So for now, we'll see you all later. Have a wonderful day wherever you are. And as we always say, please be blessed.
And be a blessing to others.
All righty. Good deal. You're getting better at that, Fred.